Hello, my name is Florentino Bedoya, and I will be giving a presentation on my research paper on disinformation and how it has become the greatest threat to global security. My name is Florentino Bedoya again. The School of Undergraduate Studies with Excelsior College. The class is Liberal Arts 498, and for this is Professor Ethan Hoya. Now, to give an introduction, I will start with defining what disinformation is. It is the false information deliberately and often covertly spread as by planting rumors or in order to influence public opinion or obscure the truth. Now, when looking at this, you look at the what has been the impact of disinformation throughout history. Disinformation has been used throughout since the dawn of time. Um, we have mainly seen it as a tool of war or political in political nature. It has either been used by deceiving the enemy into thinking they're at a different place at a different time, or has been used as a tool to be able to take power from those in a political position. Now, some of the main things that I did focus on in my research was the forms in which disinformation is mainly used, whichever field that it's been utilized in. So the forms that I mainly focused on was control, disrupt, destroy, whoever is deemed as an enemy. Now, this is pretty vague in the context of enemy can be seen as somebody without the same belief or just in a different country. Distinguishing between these is why I broke it down in between more broad subjects that I would be able to talk about, and those being economic, social, infrastructure, military, and political. Now, after that, I do mention the cultural perspectives, ethical implications, and proposed solutions. And we finalize with conclusion. Now, I will talk about the first subject, which is the economic. The economic strain that disinformation has created in the modern era has been astronomical. We see that companies' stock will go down because of this information. This could either be by making up the death of a CEO, and it will plummet the stock of a certain company, and it will create chaos. Now, if you take this in a broader concept, like what we see right now with COVID-19, and you see that the spread of misinformation or disinformation has been used to deceive countries such as China, in which it spread rapidly, but they denied it and controlled international corporations or international entities to be able to show that the epidemic and pandemic was not such a threat. Now, this form of disinformation created a vast economic implications for corporations around the world. Mainly, we saw it in airlines. We saw it at every aspect of business. Now, seeing how this is being approached by companies, by leaders, by people at every echelon of these companies is where we must understand that it is going to be a devastating thing. Mitigating this is going to be very difficult. Now, understanding that it is a problem and it is a threat is the number one priority. Now, it is very clear that it is an economical threat. Now, understanding that the implication has been in the millions of dollars is now a reality. Before, we used to hail these tech companies that has such an economic impact for a lot of third world countries in which really there was no real way to make money, but now they host technological hubs. As in right now, we have technological hubs uprising in Western Africa or all throughout Asia. These used to be countries in which the implications for trade were not even feasible, but they're now astronomically being affected by this information. Now, For the next aspect that completely intertwines with this is the social structures. Some of the social structures that create these countries or fortify them against outside influence. One of the biggest ones is religious institutions, governance, and academic institutions. Some of the most susceptible ones right now, you can't even pick one. All of them are susceptible. Religious institutions are being attacked. It could either be through social media, news sources, the aggregation of articles that are contradictory to what is actually happening, academic institutions that are being influenced by foreign actors. Now you're starting to see more and more that state actors, other governments, are have a vested interest in influencing the future leaders of every country. You, your biggest targets will always be universities. You will always have the biggest impact because these are the people that one day will be running every corporation, every government position, militaries. It's it's easily it's easy to understand the impact that you can have, and it will pay in dividends in the future. Now, inoculating social structures against disinformation is is very difficult. You you have to understand that these social structures, it's not that they work independently, as if they work intertwined. So this information that is given to a religious institution will in turn translate into governance. It will move to academic, and these are the leaders that we look up to, that we seek guidance from, and in turn, they're the biggest distributors of disinformation. Now, for infrastructure, there's multiple ways to look at the infrastructure aspect of this. If you look at the infrastructure, you look at what's already in place and how it's being targeted. So you look at instances where in Michigan they have the problem with water, and it's polluted, and for a long time the government was being shown as disseminating this information to be able to combat the population's aggressive nature against them. Now that in turn became a double-edged sword because later on it was information was provided that the government was wrong. Now this goes back into other implications. The economical, I mean, a lot of people are a lot less inclined to visit some of these states, some of these cities because of this. Now you add the fact that this infrastructure has now been highlighted as inappropriate or inadequate. You continue to add on to this that these institutions now have a problem with trying to mitigate the spread of this information that's concerning this infrastructure. It continues to affect infrastructure all throughout the world. You can find pieces of infrastructure that are critical to the survival of a country and easily attack them with this information to the point at which a population will not either trust it, or they would just simply either attack it, or, I mean, honestly, you can move a population to disrupt infrastructure very easily by just finding the right motivator. Now, the other aspect of infrastructure is the lack of infrastructure that supports the informational landscape and to be able to fight against disinformation. Disinformation spreads because there's nothing that can stop it. And it's the same thing for a virus, if you want to look at it in that way. You see that companies that create content are a lot more than the companies that are fighting against the content that is negative towards the population. Now, the majority of the companies that are doing a lot of the monitoring and shutting down some of the disinformation, it's just very minute compared to how much of this information is out there, and it keeps being created in numerous numbers. That is one of the major infrastructure problems that we have in being able to create as much. Germany now has had a bigger role in the trying to stop the spreading of disinformation. But even in the United States, one of the biggest countries in the world, is having a problem with it. You can only imagine what it is like for a smaller country in Africa, a smaller country in Southeast Asia, even bigger countries in Mexico that are not really that focused in protecting themselves against disinformation. For the next aspect of my research project was the military. The military is susceptible in several ways with disinformation. Disinformation has always been used with the military, and it's been called different things. It could have been deception. It could be in influence operations. It could be a varied amount of different topics, different words to describe it, but it's all the same thing. Disinformation is just a manipulation of data and to be to be used as a weapon. Now, the other aspect of the military is its susceptibility to disinformation. I mean, militaries are comprised of humans, and every human is susceptible to it. So now you come to the realization that the soldiers in your militaries are being either controlled or either being influenced by foreign actors. I'll put it into context. You have the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military that's been susceptible to Russian influence for a very long time since the dissolvement of the USSR. Now, as of late, they've had Russian separatists utilize social media to target soldiers individually and either demotivate them, demoralize them, or attack their families and threatening them to to do something to them so that they would either stop fighting or just desert. Same thing goes for the U.S. military. When I was in Ukraine, some of the news sources came by saying that their soldiers were committing crimes, they're committing rape, they're committing all kinds of atrocities. When in turn, we all knew that it was a lie. Now, understanding that every aspect that has a human factor is susceptible to disinformation is critical. So trying to provide the training, trying to provide continued training is the best possible solution. The problem is around the world, not every country has the resources that the U.S. military has, that the Russian military, that the Chinese military, which are probably the biggest, some of the biggest militaries in the world. You also have first world countries that have smaller militaries, but the training might not be there, or the need for is barely coming to. So attacking this aspect of disinformation in the military and its continued and its historical use is now becoming delight, and with resources and technology is now being better implemented by the enemy, better received by us, or other militaries, and it is becoming a huge problem. Now, for the next part would be the political side. Strategic deception and political deception is as old as time. We have seen every way, shape, and form where it comes from movies, history books, talking about how politicians either lie, deceive, and use information and manipulate it in a way in which it's best preferable to them. Now, understanding that the evolution of deception is now disinformation. You see political ads that all they do is attack the opponent. This has come to light in the 2016 elections, and you saw how the Russians were being blamed for the manipulation of the information to either help out either candidate. Honestly, it's been very apparent that they were helping both sides. The best part about disinformation is that you can destabilize a country with minimal effort, with minimal use of funds. All it really takes is manpower, and now it's even moving to machine learning, where you really just have to use a targeted AI to be able to create these programs to be able to disseminate information. Understanding that it's a political tool and how to stop it. Now, it all ends up rounding out to the solutions that I will provide at the end, but understanding the political disinformation, misinformation, deception, manipulation, it's always been a part of human nature, and in turn, politics, governance, and everything in between. Now, cultural perspectives and inequities. Understanding cultural dysphoria and how it's affected the rest of the world. What I've seen out throughout different parts of the world has been very interesting. If you look at how it's affected the United States, how now there's more of a focus towards trying to look at the mental side and its effects on the human psyche, and how we have a hunger for information, and but we have our attention spans a lot shorter. We are in an era where clickbait is what propagates the majority of news outlets, not newspapers, news outlets online, that if they can't attract your attention with 5 words, 6 words, you're probably not going to read it. And if it's unattractive, it's not palatable, it's not going to be sold. And it goes from culture to culture. If you take it from an aspect in Eastern Europe, you take the dissolution of the USSR and how it affected information, how it's in turn coming to an age in which Russian disinformation has become the highlight of what disinformation campaigns are falling towards: unconventional warfare and the usage of everything but conventional forces to be able to overtake a country. And this we've seen with the over them of the Russian government overtaking the Crimea Peninsula, and most of it being done through disinformation. You saw that up to the takeover of it, they maximized their cyber attack efforts, and then once taken over, they messaged the population saying that it was always part of Russia, that the most important part of it is if you were living in Ukraine, you were by birth already Russian. You've always been Russian, and this is the disinformation that was always being spread. And understanding that it is extremely important that the Russian government do this at the same time as taking a military, uh, conventional military perspective to it and taking over Crimea was the only way to ensure victory. And to this day, they still have it. That should be a testament to the power of disinformation campaigns in Eastern Ukraine and Eastern Europe. Now, looking at this more from the Pacific side, looking at more of like the Chinese and the Republic of China, the People's Republic of China, and their perspective on regulating the internet and the utilization of disinformation. Well, mostly on depending on the perspective, disinformation should be the manipulation of data and things not necessarily being true, but there's a grain of truth to them. Now, the country of China has been doing this leaves and bounds better than any other country in the world, and that we're focused on Russia is incredible because they've been regulating information in their country for a very long time. I would say since the inception of the internet, because the internet became a tool for the freedom of speech, something that is not available in China. Understanding that they monitor every aspect of what you do, and in turn creating a similar credit score system that we have, but it's called Sesame. Now, our credit score mainly focuses on financial aspects of your life and how you've curtailed negative negative behavior so that your credit score would be up, so that you'd be able to purchase a home, purchase a vehicle, purchase mainly anything you'd want as long as you had a good history. Now, the Chinese government, on the other hand, has included every aspect of life. You could have gone into a fight, you could have been late to something, you could have not paid this bill, you could have anything, anything. everything into a social credit structure where if you did something wrong, it could affect your possibilities of getting a job. Um, this could in turn, if it's that bad, it will inherit onto your future generations, which is creating a huge impact. And then now it's only been up for 5 years, but the effects of it has been seen worldwide, and the rest of the world is really not that focused on it because most of humanity is only focused on what's ahead of them, the that 5 meter mark in front of them instead of the 10 to 15 or even 30, if it makes it any clearer. Now, the US is a particular case for disinformation. We are the founding country for most of these tech companies, and they have delivered us the most powerful machines you could ask for: search engines, social media, um, you can name it, smartphones. It all originated here. I mean, they might be built somewhere else, but we get the latest and greatest, and with that comes, we get it, and we're the test subjects for it. So a lot of this information campaigns and all that stuff, I mean, it's all Soviet war era doctrine that is now being curtailed into marketing with the usage of modern technology. It's a little difficult to try to encompass so much of what the United States and its ingestion of disinformation, because we've seen it so plain and out there in like the 2016 elections, and now in 2020 with COVID, and how China did not deliver information clearly, how the United States population is having a problem with understanding how much of the information that the government keep to themselves and how much should we have already gotten when everything was starting. it it's an evolving issue, and part of the cultural part of understanding it is we have an open aspect about freedom of speech. We are okay with the opposition or anybody having an opinion, something that the two previous examples did not: China and Russia. And now balancing the freedom of speech and disinformation is where the dilemma comes. Is disinformation freedom of speech? Is it is it going to be wrapped under the same context of you can't yell fire inside of a crowded building if there's no fire? It is to be seen, and it is something that our lawmakers are going to have to start looking into. Ethical implications. Some of the ethical implications I wanted to talk about is the first one being religious ethics. The reason I talk about religious ethics is because religion is probably the driving force behind some of the most powerful political leaders, the most powerful countries, and in turn, not just those countries' leaders, but the church's leaders. We have uh, we have priests in Mexico where Catholicism is the most prominent religion at a penetration around 70 to 81% Catholic, where the priest can say anything, really anything outrageous, and a portion of that 81% will believe it and take it to heart. One of the biggest news coming out of that in that realm has been him talking about chlorine dioxide and the ingestion of it to be able to cure COVID-19, which is, I mean, to most people. Well, I'm not going to say most people. It's not. It's a very big generalization, but um, to someone educated or someone informed would have immediately denied that and been like, no, that's not a thing. That's not possible. It's toxic and it would kill you. But Pastor Oscar Gutierrez in Mexico broadcasted out in Facebook to 220,000 followers that that was a thing, blaming, and not only that, but immediately blaming pharmaceutical companies and governments for being corrupt or malinformed, which it has a sliver of truth to an extent. The Mexican government has always been known for being corrupt, but at the same time, it is creating a vacuum that is being filled by the Catholic leader. And he is the voice of truth, and everybody's going to believe him. It is the major problem with disinformation and religion is because you can target that priest, deliver an immense amount of disinformation to him, and to an extent, it'll come today when he'll believe it and he'll disseminate it. He has a bigger audience, and it'll be propagated all over the country or all over the world. Now, the other part in ethics that is wildly important to me, and I believe it entails exactly what disinformation has been affecting, has been utilitarian ethics. Utilitarian ethics are based off of what is good and bad to the benefit of the group or the benefit of the population. Now, disinformation, and in turn, is bad. It provides a bad a, a bad way to receive information. It's providing lies. It's been manipulated and doctored. Now, the problem lies when if a piece of information is too vital to the world or to the security of a government, will it be manipulated? Because in every lie, there's a sliver of truth. To what extent is the good of the population if you're lying to them and you're not providing the full truth? It is a finicky subject, and we've seen it now with surveillance capitalism, a very popular subject now with personal information being sold because it provides a great way to make money for corporations. Now, how much of this is utilitarian? How much is this helping out the populations? We have companies like Google who take in massive amounts of information, and they use this information to better deliver products that are more curtailed to each person. But at the same time, is this good for the individual? Is this good for the corporation? Or is this good for the world as a whole? The evolution of technology is not taking into account that part of the information being put out is disinformation. Now, for proposed solutions, it is it is a very difficult way to describe this. Maybe it's a little bit too far fetched, but I do think that disinformation, misinformation, manipulation, whatever you want to call it, is a virus. It spreads like a virus, and it always have, and it always will, and now is being called an infodemic too, because of COVID-19 and how it's the information and how it spread so quickly and how it affected its people. One of the main parts I want to talk about for proposed solutions would be highlighting leadership out throughout religious institutions, corporations, militaries, governments, every sort of institution where there's any leadership, which is absolutely everywhere, needs to take responsibility. Needs to take responsibility for training, for educating its subordinates, for having an open discussion. And if they are not prepared to either seek training or might have to be replaced by somebody that does. It is a rapidly growing technological era where this information is now more readily available. It is difficult to be able to place all the blame on leadership, but in the end, if you look at the sphere of experience that I have is with the military. If you look at any military operation, if it would have been the mistake of the most less senior person, when something is going to get investigated, the person that's going to be blamed is going to be the leader for not checking up on his subordinate. And I firmly believe that it should be the case for everywhere else and every other institution or government or religious institution around the world. Now, the other part is monitoring or trying to have some type of oversight over technological companies. Most of these companies have the freedom to do as they please. They have had the freedom to evolve as rapidly as they wanted to, but at the same time, with evolution comes a lot of little niches and problems in the middle that if it's too fast, you're not going to catch. They're going to become greater issues. Like as we're seeing with disinformation, it is being dispersed and just given to everybody. It's available to absolutely every person in the world, and we've seen the repercussions of it. There is just too much of it, and We've seen so many organizations use it to their advantage. It could either be corporations trying to sell you products, it could be ISIS trying to recruit people, it could be religious institutions trying to get you to believe that they are the better organization. I don't have any preference towards any of them, but I do believe that the manipulation of information, it is now a threat to the world. It is a threat to the individual, to an organization, and to every aspect of your life. Your information is out there now. It's pretty understand like everybody understands that their information is out there, but they don't seem to perceive they don't seem to fully grasp what that means. We have applications like TikTok who are hosted by the Chinese government, and it has been pretty outright that they're collecting information on you, and it is the reason why the United States government has made it such a vital point to even tell its military not to download it and to erase it. It's been taking judicial action towards service members that have not cared and still use it. So the problem's there. Identifying that it's a problem is not the issue, but making it important. Now, for a conclusion, um, I do want to bring up that it should have been added to the proposed solution, but I do believe that adding um, disinformation is its own disinformation classes, or just the inoculation of our youth against social media and all those other platforms. The not the ethical, but just good practices to be able to defend themselves is essential. To be added to the school system is ideal. It is the most fundamental thing we can do. Increasing the amount of personnel that's an expert in that field, or scholarships, providing more opportunities for people to get into that industry without having to incur such incredible debt like they do at university. I am a big advocate for getting your degree, getting your education, but sometimes it's just not feasible for the general population. And in turn, I will speak that having it available to the majority of the world, to the majority of the general population, is essential. We provide essential services, and it is even being talked that one of the new essential services could be the internet because of this pandemic, and how the internet has become essential to being able to take classes. Now, providing a degree of protection or a degree of education on the proper use of the internet is essential. So I'll leave it there with everyone's susceptible to disinformation. Absolutely everybody. There's no such thing as a vaccine for it. But like in anything else, education is the only way to fix it. Thank you very much, and you have a great day.